Hello chess friends, and welcome to our chess channel, and welcome to a new opening series that we're starting today. Welcome to the long-awaited 150 attack against the Pirc defense from White's perspective. So many times you have requested on my YouTube chess channel that I should cover the 150 attack, because you also saw that I apply this attack many times against the Pirc defense, against the modern defense. Many times we have seen a similar attacking formation. So as I said, I wanted to always start the series, and now I have prepared some very important lines for you in the continuation of the series. In my opinion, the 150 attack is a beautiful attack that you can play many times, and the cool part is that you can play the same move order many times. So you're applying the same setup, and then you have sort of an attacking formation, and your opponent can of course play particular sidelines, can play also some different ideas, but our main attacking formation stays, our main goal is staying, which is very important when you're maybe a beginner. Then you don't want to study so much theory, you want to have a preparation of course in some openings, but you don't want to, I don't know, learn some openings just by heart. You want to have also strategical understanding of these types of structures. So that's why I think the 150 attack is a beautiful attacking formation in which you can apply many times in the same move order without thinking so much in the beginning. So let's see now what is the 150 attack against the Pirc defense. In my opinion, the Pirc defense is a bad opening. You should not play it. It's simply, in my opinion, too passive. There are many better ways to meet e4 or d4. So the Pirc defense is simply too passive, because when you're playing the move d6 in the beginning, the normal Pirc defense move, you're only attacking these two squares. You're attacking c5 and e5, but this is now black side on the board. So whenever you study an opening, you should, I think, immediately attack your opponent's side of the board. For instance, after move e4, maybe you could play here the Sicilian, for instance c5, which is already attacking white side on the board. I think it's something that we could understand very easily. When you are choosing some openings, be aggressive, be already there, be already on your opponent's side of the board. So that's why, in my opinion, the Pirc defense is a little bit too passive, because you see also in the 150 attack, but also in some other attacks that are possible, that black faces many times some positional problems. So let's see now what is the 150 attack, and today we're starting to analyze the first line, which will be then the move knight to g4. I'll explain you why this move knight to g4 is happening many times, and how white should counterplay these ideas of black. So here our first move is the move e4. We have d6, the Pirc defense. Now after move d4, we should immediately occupy here the center, because we are already controlling these four squares on black side of the board, which is very important. And you see now after move d6 e4, we have a great central control, and we have already occupied this other side of the board. Again, I'm repeating, black is just occupy the c5 and e5 square, which is, in my opinion, too passive. Black is not gaining any spaces in the center of the board. So here after move d4, the normal line would be knight to f6, attacking the e4 pawn. We should proceed here with the normal knight to c3, and now after move g6, the fianchetto idea, we should proceed with the normal bishop to e3. Now after move bishop to g7 and queen to d2, we have reached now the 150 attack position. So we have reached now with the 150 attack setup. And what is the goal of the 150 attack? Our main strategical goal is to play bishop to h6, then to trade off the bishops. Here bishop takes g7, and then we want to play h4 h5. If black castles, then we want to play something like h takes g6, and now use this h6 square, because we have already traded off the bishops. Then we want to play queen to h6, and then with the rook and queen battery, deliver checkmate on the h file. So this is the main goal. Many times the 150 attack will not end with a checkmate on the h file, but our h file attack should be our main strategical idea, our main strategical goal. You should not forget about it, because it's our basic concept of the 150 attack. Many times your opponent will try different sidelines. We'll see also some other ideas also for white, but as I said in the beginning, it's just a flank attack, immediate flank attack, that we should try to apply. So after move queen to d2, the most annoying move, and probably bothered you many times, is the move knight to g4, and this line we'll cover today. So this will be our first lesson after move knight to g4. So what should we do here? you should never really give up your dark square bishop. That's not what you should do. If you give up the dark square bishop, I think you could face many strategical problems. So that's why you have to play this game a little bit differently. So here, after move knight to g4, we should proceed with a normal here bishop to g5, and now your opponent could still maybe kick away your bishop. Will probably many times to play this line h6, bishop to h4, and now after g5, okay, black has his fun. You have stepped back. Now the bishop is on g3, but notice now that after move bishop to g3, okay, the bishop is not maybe now on the optimal score, but now notice now this light score weaknesses that black is now in the position. Now in the continuation of the game, we should also try bishop to d3, and then if necessary even e5 is possible. If for instance black castle, then we could use this diagonal here in order to attack black's king. But we should also not forget, which I said in the beginning, about our h-file attack. h4 is now the crucial moment that we should play immediately after move bishop to g3. Here one of my opponents, I wanted to show one of my games in which I played the game without inaccuracies, mistakes or blunders. So I think it's a game that I played really in a good way. So after move knight to d7, believe me or not, the evaluation, the computer evaluation is already +2 for white, which is really incredible. That's the beauty about the 150 attack. But as I said, it's not only showing the beauty of the 150 attack, it's I think showing the weaknesses of the Pirc defense. And here it's really a weird position. My opponent played knight to d7 and I stuck to my plan. h4 is still working because now black is never going to castle anymore on the king side, because we have already opened this side of the board. h6 and g5 already happened, so this pawn structure is already weakened. So now kingside castling I think would be a suicide, because then, as we said, we could use ideas bishop to d3, e5, and then if the h-file opens, then with the rook support, the h7 would be a crucial weakness in black's camp. We can agree, I think this is already too passive position for my opponent. After move h4, what he tried now is g takes h4. I played rook to h4, and notice now that even if black would have castled here on the queen side, it's really hard to achieve that, because knight to b6 you have to play first, then you have to play, I don't know, somewhere with the bishop, then you have to play queen to d7, which is really a weird position. The bishop on e6 would be a weird piece, because still you can kick it away with d5. The knight on b6 would be a weird square for the knight, because still we can kick it away with maybe a4, a5. The queen would be then wardable too, so maybe attacks on b5. So it's really hard for black to castle queenside. So black king will probably even stuck here in the center of the board, which is something that you should not do, of course, from black's perspective. So as I said, from this point on, it's already a one-way ticket game for white. So here after move rook to h4, my opponent tried knight to f6, and now e5. And e5 is such a beautiful motif in the 150 attack. You should always try to play e5 if it's possible. But notice now this e5 is possible, because if my opponent would have played here knight to c6, then e5 would be maybe a slightly mistake, because then the queens will be traded off if this d file clears. I hope you can follow. If the d file clears, then the queens are off the board, and then our 150 attack is splashed, because we don't want to trade off the queens, we don't want to trade off bishops, we don't want to trade off pieces, because we are on the attacking side. And when you are on the attacking side, then you don't want to have a simplification, then you don't want to simplify the game too much by trading off pieces. And that's why this move knight to d7 is really bad, because we can play now e5, you see, after d takes e5, but now we're not risking here the trades of queens, which is really beautiful. And now my opponent played knight to b8, but look at this is really a too passive setup, and again a new motif that you will play many times in the 150 attack. Now comes move e6. It's a sacrifice that you have to memorize, that you have to know. So first we had now already 3 beautiful attacking elements in the 150 attack. First we have the move h4, so this was our first attacking motif. Then we had e5, this was our second attacking motif, and now e6. This is now the third attacking motif. You should always memorize these 3 motifs, and whenever you have the opportunity, maybe just search for them. Maybe not in the beginning they are possible, maybe they're not possible, but always consider them. Always be prepared for these moves. And now after move e6, the evaluation is already +5, which is really incredible. So black didn't lose any material, but his position is so weak that he is already -5 here from black's perspective. So after move e6, my opponent tried to take f takes e6, but now bishop to d3. Look at this, look at this light square problems. As we said in the beginning, my opponent already played h6 g5. Okay, he had his fun with the dark square bishop and now faced many light square problems. So here my opponent tried to develop. I delivered check anyway, bishop to g6, king to f8, so no castling for my opponent anymore, and now I simply queenside castling. And this is also a very important attacking idea in the Pirc defense, in the 150 attack from white's perspective, the d file attack. So many times we'll play a different move order. Maybe we'll castle queenside earlier, and then e5 is working, because then our opponent could not maybe take the pawn on e5 because of the pressure on the d file. So we'll come to the point. Let's now stuck to this game because I think it had really some important attacking elements. So after move king queenside castle, my opponent tried a6. He didn't want to allow here knight to b5 and then to lose the pawn on c7, and I simply developed with knight to f3. He tried b5, maybe to develop finally the light square bishop, and after move queen to e3, believe me or not, in this position he already resigned. So there's not a good way anymore to protect the e6. If I sneak in with the queen, then also the checkmate on f7 could work. So as I said, also knight to d4 is working. If e5, then we can still take it out, bishop to e5. So in my opinion, it's a lost game here for blacks. D file is already opened. As we said, it's a too passive setup for black. So the evaluation here is +11 for white. Really wild stuff. So let's see now different possibilities. So here I wanted to show you again this 150 attack setup. Again, we're playing bishop to e3, bishop to g7, queen to d2, again knight to g4. So now again bishop to g5, h6. So we will reach now the same position, but now the difference will be that our opponent could try maybe here this move knight to f6, and the idea is clear. Now our opponent wants to play knight to h5 and then to simply grab the bishop on g3. Don't worry, now we're sticking to our plan. Again, this is possible. We should proceed with the normal h4, and this maybe seems now like a mistake from white's perspective, but actually this is perfectly fine, because you have to now realize what's going on the board. This is now the beauty of the 150 attack. So now, okay, your opponent could stuck to his plan, could maybe try to attack your dark square bishop, but now we should we should proceed with the normal h takes g5. So after knight to g3, we should not take out the knight, we should just proceed with g takes h6, attacking the bishop, sacrificing the rook. That's now a beautiful sharp line that I think you have to know, that I studied at home, and that I'm very familiar with, because after move knight to h1, we should simply proceed with h takes g7. Now our opponent has to step back, and now with queen to h6, we're creating a double threat. We're also attacking the knight on h1, but we are also trying to attack the rook, because the rook is not connected to the queen. So many times black will have to play even some weird ideas like king to d7 just in order to have a connection between the rook and the queen. And this is now one of the most annoying pawns that I think you have seen in your life, because now the pawn on g7 is causing many tactical problems in black's position. So after move queen to h6, your opponent could try maybe c6, but it's, as I said, too weak, because we still can take out the knight on h1, because as we said, rook to g7 is not working, because there is always this threat queen to h8, and we could grab the rook. So that's why c6 is not working. Our opponent has to play now development moves. He has to play knight to c6. He has maybe even to try something like bishop to g4, queen to d7, maybe finally castle queenside and get out of this tactical mess. But now you should not worry. You should just proceed with queen to h7, attacking the rook, forcing now this move king to d7. And it seems so okay that still it's unclear why white is much better. Again, the evaluation is +2 for white. What we should not do, of course, is to take out here the knight immediately. Then black will take the pawn, and black could have maybe a solid game. Although black is up the exchange, still black has maybe some weaknesses here on this diagonal, but I think this is a position that black could survive. So that's why after move knight to f3 and sorry, let's go back, and queen to h7. When our opponent is playing king to d7, then we should play normal knight to f3. We should not take here the knight on h1. As we said, we should proceed with normal development here with this knight. So here our opponent could try maybe this idea. We'll try probably to play something like f6, then queen to f7. We'll eventually also try to attack the g7. Pawn is trying to grab this pawn. Now it's time to be fast, because now we have to play d5, and d5 is again a beautiful move, because after potential knight to e5 the game is over here for black, because we can try bishop to b5. If black covers now with the pawn on c6, then we have knight to e5. After d takes e5 we can take, and now after potential b takes c6 we can even queenside castling, and again it's a weird position. We can then afterwards, after king to c7, we can also try knight to d5, so it's a not pleasant game here for black. So here after move, let's go back, d5. Your opponent could also try knight to b4, which is again not the best of moves, because still bishop to b5 is working. It's a very weird position by the king. Now after move c6 again, we should step back, also protecting our c2 pawn. If for instance king to c7 happens, then a3, the knight has to step back, and now after this ideas we have even this one, knight to d5. As we said, again this beautiful motif is working, knight to d5. Then after something like king to b7, there is even this tactical shot. Look at this, bishop takes c6. If the queen takes, then of course the rook is hanging. If the king takes, then we can take out this one. After queen takes b8, we have even knight to e7, a beautiful fork. So these are of course positions that you will probably not reach many times, but I wanted to show you also some beautiful attacking examples, how this beautiful attack 150 attack is working in beautiful ways. So in my opinion, as we said, after move queen to h6 here, black is already in serious problems. We have seen c6 is not working, queen to h1, so black has to play some weird ideas of king to d7. So let's go back. After move knight to h4, your pawn h5. Your opponent could also try, instead of this move, g4. So it's also a decent method that black could play. So black doesn't have to chase away your bishop here. Black can proceed here with g4, and it's trying to lock the king side, which you see also many times in the 150 attack. But again, we should not worry. We should play h5. Now we're not allowing our opponent to take the square, because the rook is protecting this one. And now we have a little bit situation where black is paralyzed now on the king side. We have now created really some great spaces. Our pawn is already on the 5th rank, and what we should do now is to attack this pawn on g4. Maybe we cannot attack it in order to grab it, in order to gain an extra pawn, but after potential f3, noted that many times the g file will get opened. So this is also something that we should consider here, g file attack, and then the bishop on g7 would be a little bit loose. So it's also something worth to know. So our opponent could try maybe the normal move c6. Now we play knight to e2, normal development. After move b5, we can play a3, not allowing here maybe some b4 ideas, then to grab the pawn on e4. So that's why a3, and now a6. And this is a position that you see also many times in the Pirc defense. Now black is trying some ideas of bishop to b7, knight to d7, queen to c7, and queenside castling. So don't be surprised if your opponent is castling queenside in the Pirc defense. So it's also many times a strategical goal. If you have followed maybe the famous game Kasparov versus Topalov, in that game also Topalov castled queenside in the Pirc defense, also castled out of white's attack, because we can notice that white has already attacked the king side. So now black is trying to get out of the range by castling queenside. So, but you should not worry. Again, after move a6, we should proceed with the normal f4 move. As we said, f3 would be also a possibility, but now f4, in my opinion, is much more aggressive, because now e5 is now serious threat. And now our opponent should probably try g takes f3, and after bishop to b7, look at this, bishop to h3 prevents even black from castle. Rook to g1 will happen here, for instance, knight from b to d7. If happens, you know the grip. If that happens, whenever your opponent is playing knight to d7 and is cutting off here the connection between these two queens, then of course e5 is working, and again black is facing many tactical problems. D takes e5, d takes e5, for instance, knight to d5, knight to d5, c takes d5. And what we should play now, when the knight is on d7, you know the grip. we should proceed with e6, and e6 is always a beautiful method here. Now it's time to break and enter, and again black is facing many tactical problems. So as I said, when your opponent is playing this knight to d7 ideas, you should proceed always with e5, because that's the goal. We should always create this beautiful attack. So this was our analysis after potential, I don't know, knight to h4, knight to h5 or g4 that your opponent could play. So as I said, in this particular scenario, you should just take h takes g5, knight to g3. Now we take out first the pawn, which is now much better, and even if bishop to d4 happens, then we can still take out this one, also try to grab the rook. So it's, I think, very important line that you face many times. Many times black will try these ideas, but I think nothing dramatically changed in our attack. So let's see now a different example. Again, we have this knight to g4, bishop to g5 idea. Now your opponent could try maybe again h6, bishop to h4, and now your opponent could try maybe this idea, c5. I've seen also many times in my games against the Pirc events by playing the 150 attack. Now if I remove c5, you should simply play d takes c5, because here, if your opponent is trying now to kingside castle, this is again one of my games, now we should simply take. What the goal about black's setup here is this, actually, that he wants to force you to castle queenside, and then he's trying some ideas of bishop to c3, b takes c3, and then queen to a5, maybe to get some kind of an attack here with the queen. But you should not worry, because we're simply fine here. We didn't make any mistakes, although we have to say the the dark square diagonal of the bishop is opened. The knight is very active, but the f2 is so far covered by the bishop on h4. So here my opponent tried this idea, queen to b6, attacking further the b2 pawn, but now we should still take it out, because if our opponent takes out now the pawn, which seems like a dangerous idea, you should not, of course, play this one, because then you get bishop takes c3 and similar stuff. So that's why here in the continuation we should just proceed. After queen to b2, we have to first take out the rook. It comes with a check, and now king to f8 is not possible because of the checkmate on d8. So that's why our opponent has to take out with the bishop, and now we should play simply rook to b1, and the queen has to step back from the attack. So that's why after d takes e7, our opponent could play rook to e8, but now we could proceed in this way, or queen to d8 is winning the game immediately. It's a simplified way to proceed here. Our opponent could try maybe queen to c6, but now we can queenside castle, and again, if bishop to c3 happens, we can take out first the rook, rook takes d8, and now rook to d8 again is winning the game. So we should not take out the bishop immediately. Now we should use our 8th rank attack and have really some great fun. So as I said, this was the analysis after let's go back. So c takes d6, but our opponent doesn't have to play after move d takes c5. Let's go back. He could also proceed with this idea, g5. This lines I've seen many times, as I said. Now we should simply play bishop to g3, and now after d takes c5, what we should do is to play bishop to b5, and bishop to b5 causes again new problems, positional problems for black. If our opponent, for instance, plays something like knight to c6, then we should simply play queen takes d8. King takes d8 has to be played because the knight was pinned, and now we should again queenside castle. If our opponent tries king to e8 to step back, then we should proceed with knight to d5, and now knight to c7 is a serious threat. So what our opponent could do is, of course, knight to d4 to cover himself, but now knight to a4 is, I think, winning the game. First of all, the c5 is hanging, and now, for instance, if h5 happens, we could proceed with h4, so we're not allowing here to get trapped. Here after g takes h4, rook to h4, but now c3 is a serious threat, and again black is losing the game for sure. So for instance, even if bishop to d7 happens, we can simply take it. Now with c3 the game is over. So this is something that in my opinion is not working. This early c5 idea is, in my opinion, a huge positional and tactical mistake. Black is already lost, I think, here in the continuation of the game. So let's see now different example again, what black could do. Again, black could maybe try knight to c6 instead of playing some pawn moves, or instead of, I don't know, maybe challenging white center with move d4, c5, pardon me. So after move knight to c6, it's, I think, again nothing special, because what we could do is immediately to attack the knight on d5. And now when your opponent is playing knight to e5, we can play h3. After move knight to f6, this would be then the normal move. We can play queenside castling. After potential a6 move, this would be, I think, then the continuation of good plan for black to attack maybe the queenside. Now we should proceed with bishop to h6. After kingside castling, we should simply take out the bishops. Again, we're stuck to our plan. As we said, we want to open the h file, deliver checkmate on the h file by including the queen and the rook. But now after move king to g7, we have this one, f4, and again we have really some space in the center of the board. Now after knight to d7, we should proceed with the g4, knight to f3, e5 is going to happen. So g5, I don't know, h4, h5. So you can be the judge of this position, but I think this is a much better position for white. Again, the evaluation is above +1 for white. White has some spaces on the center of the board. White has some spaces on the king side, and when we evaluate the attacking formations, I think white is much faster here. Black didn't gain anything so far out of this attack on the queen side, so it's, I think, a lost game for black strategically. So this is, in my opinion, also not working. So let's go back. After this move, knight to g4, we're playing bishop to g5, then knight to c6, attacking the pawn on d4. So we can play d5, knight to e5. Even if knight to d4 happens, then we still have opportunities to play something like h3. And you see now, if bishop to h6 have knight to h6, then we can play bishop to h6. Then the bishop gets deflected from the defense of the d4. So again, it's a bad game. So that's why knight to e5 has to be played. But now, as we said, with h3, knight to f6, then f4, or first, as we said, bishop to h6 and then f4 is, in my opinion, a much better position again for white. So let's see now a different example. Here again we have this knight to g4, bishop to g5 idea. What our opponent could do is now the move h6, again bishop to h4, g5, bishop to g3, and now our opponent could break and enter here with the move e5. But again, this is not so good. It seems like a good idea to break in this position like this, but now we should simply take d takes e5, because if our opponent takes now with the pawn, then we can play queen to d8, king takes d8, queenside castling again comes with a check. And if bishop to d7 happens, then we have this one, knight to f3 is very important, because f6, in order to defend the pawn, is not working because you get h3, so the knight gets trapped. That's now the beautiful attacking idea about this line. For instance, after move bishop to d6 and knight to f3, your opponent could maybe try to escape from the d file attack, but now we should play simply h3, knight to f6, and you see now the pawn is hanging here on e5, and the game is, I think, over for black. Knight to an f7 is also a threat. The d file attack is, I think, again, too much to handle. So let's go back. So after move d takes e5, your opponent could try knight to e5, but again, it's not a problem. We didn't maybe open the d file, but now we should proceed simply with queenside castle. After move knight to c6, now again h4. h4 we have seen many times as a beautiful motif. Now after move bishop to e6, I've sorted out one great game in this position. So as we said here, knight to e5, queenside castling, knight to c6, h4, bishop to e6. Now knight to d5 is, in my opinion, perfectly fine, because it's not going to be likely that your opponent will give up such a powerful light square bishop like this. Then a queen to d5 is going to happen. You see bishop to c4 could be also an idea. f4, knight to f3, also very cool idea here for white. So with this semi-open game with the bishop pair on the board, white has, I think, great attacking chances. So after move knight to d4, here black in this game that I found, it was a game played by Manfred Dorer against Milan Vodička. Black again tried this idea g4 to lock the h file, lock the g file. It's not allowing this file to get open on the king side. Here I think h5, again we have the same move, not allowing here black to connect these two pawns with h5 himself. Then if h5 g4 happens, then black could have a solid game. h5 perfectly fine. Here queen to d7, again black is preparing queenside castling, but now f4, again a beautiful move. G takes f4, g takes f3 en passant, and now with f4 we want again to kick away the knight. So here queenside castling, bishop to h4, we have rook to f8, and now f4, knight to g4, and now bishop to b5. And again, you can be really the judge of this position. In my opinion, again, something went wrong here for black. Black didn't gain anything out of this attack. And look at this attacking formation by these bishops of white. Knight on f3 could happen here. The continuation, king to b8 was played, and now beautiful tactical shot here by white, knight to e7, creating this annoying pin. So here in the continuation we have rook to e8, knight takes c6, b takes c6, and now at least what we gained here is a weakened pawn structure, and white won the game eventually. But that's not the point. As we said, let's go back to the crucial line. After move d takes e5 and knight to e5, we should simply queenside castle. We should not complicate. Knight to c6 and h4, again in my opinion a much better position here for white. So here the continuation, let's see another example. Again we have this bishop to g4, knight to g4, bishop to g5. We have here again the move h6, bishop to h4, kingside castling could be also here now finally idea. So white is facing many times also this ideas by black. Black is castling kingside, but has already a little bit weakened the pawn structure with the move h6. So we should proceed now with f3. If our opponent plays knight to f6, then we should simply queenside castling. If our opponent plays maybe something like g5 himself, then still we can step back with the move bishop to g3. We have seen that nothing is wrong with these types of ideas. So after move knight to f6, we should play simply queenside castling, and you get the grip. After move knight from b to d7, what should we do? We know the stuff. We should go e5, and here our opponent could play maybe knight to h7, could maybe use this square in order to escape with the knight. But now with f4, here d takes e5, maybe d takes e5 could happen. But again, as I said also in the beginning of the video, the d file attack can be also crucial in our beautiful play. Knight on f3, bishop to c4 is going to happen. So again, white is much better. For instance, in this position, white has a +3 evaluations, which is really wild. So as I said, we should not worry so much what happens if that happens. You should not really study the 150 attack by heart. Notice that many times we're playing the h file attack. Notice also that after a move knight from b to d7, we're playing many times the e file attack. We have seen also the sacrifice motif with the move e6, which is also perfectly fine. So in my opinion, really you have really great attacking chances. You have really some great fun while playing. I don't know if you have studied any time in your life the 150 attack, but please do so, because I think it's not so complicated and it's really worth to study because you have really great attacking formations. So okay, this will be our first lesson of the 150 attack. In the continuation of the series we'll cover also some deeper ideas from black's perspective, and then again how to cover these ideas from white's perspective. So we'll stuck to our plan while playing the 150 attack against the Pirc fans. So I hope you liked this video. Please try it out with the 150 attack, maybe now just in some blitz bullet games, maybe just to see if it's working for you, and then in the continuation we'll cover more in line. So okay, if you want to see more good openings, also check out my d4 series, the Queen's Gambit Decline series. We will cover also some other opportunities in the Queen's Gambit Decline that we have started also recently, so don't worry about that. We will cover also some important methods in this types of structure. So here's the link to the playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.